Hello and welcome to the channel. I appreciate you stopping by for a visit. Today we will look at my portfolio holdings that are reporting Q2 earnings for week 31, covering July 28th through August the 1st of 2025. For each of these companies, we'll examine the revenue and earnings estimates and the options market implied move. We'll review the current price charts, looking at relative strength and momentum indicators. Let's get started. For Tuesday, July 29th, we have UPS reporting before the bell, Ares Capital reporting before the bell, PFE also before the bell, Pfizer. United Healthcare is also before the bell, and WPC or WP Carry reports after the bell on Tuesday. Then on the 30th, we have Altria, Hershey, Hess Midstream, ETR, all reporting before the bell. Then we have VICI Properties, Prudential, Qualcomm, Q2 Holdings, EPR Properties, and Microsoft all reporting after the bell. Then on Thursday, July 31st, we have Agree Realty and ABBV reporting before the bell, with Amazon and Apple after the market close. Then on Friday, before the bell, we have Chevron and LyondellBasell. Let's take a quick look at the earnings spreadsheet for the companies that reported earlier in the quarter. All of them had an initial response that was positive, with the exception of USB and RTX. 6 of the 7 beat on revenue, and 6 of the 7 beat on earnings. We had 2 that raised earnings and 4 that lowered earnings. Google did not provide any guidance. We had Johnson & Johnson that had an implied move of 3.1%, but their initial response the day following earnings actually increased by 6.19, so it exceeded the implied move by quite a bit. The other 6 were in line with the implied move. And also 1 week later, the 3 companies that reported in week 29 are all positive 1 week later. So the earnings estimate for these 7 companies was $9.73 per share in total, and the actual was 10.09 per share, so they beat earnings estimates by 3.7%. Before we look at the individual companies, I always like to take a look and see how the market's actually trading, see what kind of environment that we are operating in. I have this resistance line that goes across, which is at the top on February the 19th, before the decline related to the tariff announcements. And then we finally broke out above that line at the end of June, and we've been on a steady increase since that point. Last week I talked about a negative divergence where the price continues to rise, but the relative strength was decreasing. That has since resolved itself, as we have a relative strength that is higher than it was prior. So that one has been resolved. But the negative divergence on the PPO, which is momentum, is still declining while the price is increasing. So that is somewhat of a cautionary flag that I need to keep an eye on as we move through the next period of time to see if that has a negative effect on the pricing. We are trading above the 20-day moving average, and we're trading above the 50-day moving average, and we're quite a bit above the 200-day average, which sits around 58.90 at the moment. I also notice on the price volume bars here that we have a support shelf somewhere around right there between that band. So somewhere around 5,900 up to 60.50 or so. That would be an area that if we do have a pullback that I would suspect would act as support pretty near that 50-day moving average, just slightly below. We'll also take a look at the VIX, which is pretty low. It has turned upward slightly in the last couple of days, but still at 15.43 after the tariff announcements, where we reached a high of around 52.33. So we have declined a lot in the fear index. This is a good range. Anything below 20 is pretty supportive of markets.
In the previous quarter, PFE reported revenue of $13.72 billion, missing revenue estimates by $335.86 million. PFE reported earnings of 92 cents per share, beating estimates by 25 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $13.46 billion with earnings per share of 57 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 6 analysts raised estimates and 5 analysts lowered estimates. PFE meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 82% of the time. PFE is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 3.4%.
The Pfizer one-year daily chart shows that Pfizer has been making a slow grind higher. It is currently trading below an uptrending 20-day moving average and a downtrending 200-day moving average, and is trading above an uptrending 50-day moving average. We do have somewhat neutral relative strength, slightly above the midpoint, 50.78 at the moment. The PPO is positive, but we do have a negative crossover. So overall, PFE is somewhat neutral to positive as it moves into earnings.
In the previous quarter, UPS reported revenue of $21.5 billion, beating revenue estimates by $496.76 million. UPS reported earnings of $1.49 per share, beating estimates by 11 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $20.85 billion with earnings of $1.57 per share. Over the last 90 days, 2 analysts raised estimates and 19 analysts lowered estimates. UPS beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 73% of the time. UPS is showing negative relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 7.1%.
The UPS daily one-year chart shows UPS trading below a downward sloping 200-day moving average. Today, on Monday, July 28th, it is crossed below an upward trending 20-day, and it is trading above its 50-day moving average. It does have positive relative strength, but it's getting pretty close to the midline of 50. It also has positive PPO with a crossover to the upside. So we'll see how that holds as it goes into earnings. Overall, it looks like it's neutral to positive as we move into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, ARCC reported revenue of $732 million, missing revenue estimates by $37.95 million. ARCC reported earnings of 50 cents per share, missing estimates by 4 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $750.39 million with earnings of 51 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, no analysts raised estimates and 12 analysts lowered estimates. ARCC meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 91% of the time. ARCC is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 3.3%.
Ares Capital has broke out above its February all-time high, recently reaching more all-time highs just a week or so ago. It looks like on this Monday that it did drop below the 20-day moving average, but the market is not closed as I'm recording this. It is trading above a 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. It does have a positive RSI, currently sitting at 53.89. It also has a positive PPO with a negative crossover. Overall, ARCC is showing positive relative strength and momentum as it moves into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, UNH reported revenue of $109.58 billion, missing revenue estimates by $2.03 billion. UNH reported earnings of $7.20 per share, missing estimates by 9 cents per share. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $111.59 billion with earnings of $4.53 per share. Over the last 90 days, no analysts raised estimates and 20 analysts lowered estimates. UNH meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 100% of the time. UNH is showing negative relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 8.4%.
The healthcare provider stocks have been under pressure here for the last few months. You can see that UNH has taken a big drop since they pulled their guidance for the remainder of the year. CNC also pulled their guidance for the remainder of the year. They did report last week and reported negative earnings and took a big drop in the pre-market trading. But after the conference call and the company stating that they have objectives to get back to profitability by next year, the stock recovered and actually closed with a gain after the earnings. I don't know how that's going to work out for UNH. The conference call is going to be very important, I believe. It is trading below its 200-day, 50-day, and the 20-day moving average. Has negative RSI, currently sitting at 36.85. The PPO is also negative with the negative crossover. So overall, UNH is showing negative relative strength and negative momentum as it moves into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, WPC reported revenue of $409.86 million, missing revenue estimates by $2.88 million. WPC reported normalized funds from operations of 99 cents per share, missing estimates by 21 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $415.26 million with normalized funds from operations of $1.23 per share. Over the last 90 days, 1 analysts have raised and 1 analysts lowered estimates. WPC meets or beats analyst one-year forward estimates 100% of the time. WPC is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 4.3%.
WPC is trading above its 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day moving average. It does have positive RSI, trading at 59.45 at the moment. It does have positive PPO above the midline with a crossover to the upside. So overall, WPC is looking like it has strong relative strength and strong momentum moving into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, HESM reported revenue of $382 million, beating revenue estimates by $377,000. HESM reported earnings of 65 cents per share, missing estimates by 4 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $405.13 million with earnings of 76 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 1 analyst raised estimates and 3 analysts lowered estimates. HESM beats analysts' 1-year forward estimates 14% of the time. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 5.3%.
SM is trading above its 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day moving averages. It does have positive RSI, currently sitting at 59.64. It also has positive PPO with crossover to the upside. So overall, HESM is showing positive relative strength and momentum as it moves into earnings this week.
In the previous quarter, Altria reported revenue of $4.52 billion, missing revenue estimates by $96.23 million. Altria reported earnings of $1.23 per share, beating estimates by 4 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $5.19 billion with earnings of $1.38 per share. Over the last 90 days, 6 analysts raised estimates and no analysts lowered estimates. Altria meets or beats analysts' 1-year forward estimates 100% of the time. Altria is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 3.9%.
On this Monday before earnings, Altria Group is down below the 20-day and the 50-day moving average. The market isn't closed yet, so I don't know what the close will be, but it is currently trading below those 2 averages. It is trading above an upward sloping 200-day moving average. It does have slightly negative relative strength. It looks like it crossed over just today, and the PPO is positive, downward sloping, but it does have a crossover to the upside, and the accumulation looks like it's been really good for most of this past year. Overall, Altria is somewhat neutral to positive for relative strength and momentum.
In the previous quarter, Hershey reported revenue of $2.81 billion, beating revenue estimates by $11.95 million. Hershey reported earnings of $2.09 per share, beating estimates by 16 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $2.52 billion with earnings of $1 per share. Over the last 90 days, no analysts raised estimates and 15 analysts lowered estimates. Hershey meets or beats analyst 1-year estimates 100% of the time. Hershey is showing positive relative strength going into the earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 5%.
Hershey is trading above its 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day moving average. Yesterday, the 50-day moving average did cross above the 200-day moving average, confirming we are in an uptrend with Hershey. The RSI is positive, currently at 66.5, and the PPO is also positive with a crossover to the upside. Overall, Hershey is looking good moving into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, ETR reported revenue of $2.85 billion, missing revenue estimates by $202.29 million. ETR reported earnings of 82 cents per share, beating estimates by 13 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $3.28 billion with earnings of 91 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 2 analysts raised estimates and 6 analysts lowered estimates. ETR beats analysts' 1-year forward estimates 100% of the time. ETR is showing positive relative strength going into the earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 5%.
Entergy is trading above its 20-day, 50-day, and 200-day moving average. It has been consolidating since mid-February or so, all the way through July. But in the middle of July, we did have a start of a run, which is turning over. Looks like a little bit at the moment, but ETR looks good as far as pricing at the moment. The RSI is positive at 61.48, but is decreasing at the moment. We do have a positive PPO with a positive crossover that is beginning to turn over a little bit at the top, but still looks really good moving into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, PRU reported revenue of $13.41 billion, missing revenue estimates by $1.15 billion. PRU reported earnings of $3.29 per share, beating estimates by 11 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $13.42 billion with earnings of $3.24 per share. Over the last 90 days, no analysts raised estimates and 11 analysts lowered estimates. PRU beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 82% of the time. PRU is showing negative relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 6%.
Prudential is trading below its 200-day, 20-day, and 50-day moving average. Yesterday, it also closed below its 5-day moving average. Prudential does show negative relative strength at the moment, below the midline at 45. It also has negative PPO, but it does seem to be strengthening just a little bit. So overall, Prudential is showing weakness moving into the earnings, both on the RSI and momentum.
In the previous quarter, VICI reported revenue of $984.20 million, beating revenue estimates by $7.17 million. VICI reported funds from operations of 51 cents per share, missing estimates by 17 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $991.90 million with funds from operations of 65 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 2 analysts raised estimates and no analysts lowered estimates. VICI meets or exceeds analysts' one-year forward estimates 100% of the time. VICI is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 5%.
Yesterday, VICI closed below its 20-day moving average, but it's still trading above its 50-day and 200-day moving average. Yesterday, it moved into negative territory on the relative strength at 45. The PPO is still positive. We did have a negative crossover on about the 14th of July. So overall, VICI is showing just a little bit of weakness as it moves into the earnings on relative strength, but the PPO is still positive.
In the previous quarter, Qualcomm reported revenue of $10.84 billion, beating revenue estimates by $178.66 million. Qualcomm reported earnings of $2.85 per share, beating estimates by 3 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $10.34 billion with earnings of $2.71 per share. Over the last 90 days, 15 analysts raised, while 5 lowered estimates. Qualcomm meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 73% of the time. Qualcomm is showing positive relative momentum going into the earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 7.1%.
Qualcomm has moved from a low about $120 per share back up to $161 per share, but still hasn't reached the highs it was trading at the end of last year and the beginning of this year. It is currently trading above its 20-day moving average, the 200-day moving average, and the 50-day moving average. It looks like if it continues on its current trend, that the 50-day would Cross above the 200-day, confirming that we're back in an uptrend. We do have positive RSI at 59, and we do have positive PPO. And yesterday we had a positive crossover. So I think Qualcomm is showing strength as it moves into the earnings on both relative strength and PPO.
Q2 Holdings is scheduled to report second quarter earnings on Wednesday, July 30th after the market close. In the previous quarter, Q2 reported revenue of $189.74 million, beating revenue estimates by $3.25 million. Q2 reported earnings of 50 cents per share, beating estimates by 2 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $193.71 million with earnings of 53 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 7 analysts raised estimates, while 1 lowered estimates. Q2 meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 80% of the time. Q2 is showing neutral relative strength. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 9.8%. Please leave a comment if you have a thought about Q2 Holdings to share.
Q2 Holdings has pretty much been consolidating since the beginning of May. It is currently trading below its 20-day moving average, but yesterday did close above the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. The relative strength did move back positive yesterday after being in negative territory, and the PPO also crossed below zero yesterday. So overall, Q2 Holdings looks neutral to slightly positive as it moves into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, EPR reported revenue of $175.03 million, beating revenue estimates by $10.85 million. EPR reported funds from operations of $1.19 per share, beating by 1 cent. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $176.51 million with funds from operations of $1.26 per share. Over the last 90 days, 3 analysts raised estimates and 1 analyst lowered estimates. EPR beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 91% of the time. EPR is showing positive relative strength going into the earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 3.1%.
Since the tariff announcements on April the 2nd and EPR reaching its low of about 41.07 on April the 9th, it did rise to an all-time high of 61.24 on about the 14th of July and has since rolled over, trading below its 20-day moving average and yesterday closing below its 50-day moving average, but quite a bit above its 200-day moving average at the moment. The RSI has moved to negative territory, but the PPO is still in positive territory, trading above the zero line, but we did have a negative crossover a few days ago. Overall, EPR is showing a little bit of weakness in the RSI and still showing some strength in its PPO as we move into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, Microsoft reported revenue of $70.07 billion, beating revenue estimates by $1.62 billion. Microsoft reported earnings of $3.46 per share, beating estimates by 24 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $73.8 billion with earnings per share of $3.36 per share. Over the last 90 days, 25 analysts raised estimates and 6 analysts lowered estimates. Microsoft beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 91% of the time. Microsoft is showing positive relative strength moving into the earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 4.6%.
Microsoft has been on quite a run since the April 7th low at 344.16, rising to close at 512.50 yesterday. It's been on a steady increase since about the beginning of May. It is trading above the 20-day moving average, the 50-day moving average, and the 200-day. Quite extended from the 50-day and the 200-day. The RSI has been very strong since about the second week of May, mostly in overbought territory since that time. It has dropped slightly out of the overbought, sitting at 69.62 at the moment. The PPO is also very strong above the midpoint of 0, but has been steadily decreasing since about the second week of May. But the accumulation has been very strong for the last 8 months or so. Overall, Microsoft is still looking very good moving into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, ABBV reported revenue of $13.34 billion, beating revenue estimates by $422.15 million. ABBV reported earnings of $2.46 per share, beating estimates by 6 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $15.03 billion with earnings of $2.91 per share. Over the last 90 days, 1 analyst raised estimates and 12 analysts lowered estimates. ABBV meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 100% of the time. ABBV is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 4.6%.
ABBV has pretty much been trading sideways for the last 2.5 months. Yesterday they closed below their 20-day moving average. They are trading above their 50-day and 200-day. Their RSI is still slightly positive at 50.74. PPO is still positive. Overall, ABBV looks neutral to positive moving into the earnings.
In the previous quarter, ADC reported revenue of $169.16 million, beating revenue estimates by $2.63 million. ADC reported funds from operations of $1.04, beating estimates by 1 cent. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $173.07 million with funds from operations of $1.05 per share. Over the last 90 days, 3 analysts raised estimates and 2 analysts lowered estimates. ADC meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 100% of the time. ADC is showing positive relative strength going into earning. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 4.8%.
ADC has been on somewhat of a downtrend since the April 19th high. They are trading below the 50-day moving average, the 200-day moving average, but still trading above the 20-day average. The RSI has moved into negative territory, currently at 48.02, and the PPO is also in negative territory and looks to be curling over for a little bit more downside on the pricing. So overall, ADC is looking neutral to weaker moving into the earnings this week.
In the previous quarter, Amazon reported revenue of $155.67 billion, beating revenue estimates by $546.51 million. Amazon reported earnings of $1.59 per share, beating estimates by 23 cents. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $162.02 billion with earnings of $1.31 per share. Over the last 90 days, 8 analysts raised estimates and 28 analysts lowered estimates. Amazon meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 55% of the time. Amazon is showing positive relative strength going into the earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 5.4%.
Amazon has showed steady price increases since about April the 21st. They are trading above their 20-day, their 50-day, and their 200-day moving average. The RSI is positive, currently sitting at 68, and the PPO has been positive since about the first or second week of May. Overall, Amazon is looking very strong moving into the earnings. Might also add that the accumulation has been very strong for the past year.
In the previous quarter, LYB reported revenue of $7.68 billion, beating revenue estimates by $264.09 million. LYB reported earnings of 33 cents, missing estimates by 10 cents per share. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $7.51 billion with earnings of 78 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 1 analyst raised estimates and 13 analysts lowered estimates. LYB beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 55% of the time. LYB is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 8.6%.
Lyondell has been on a downtrend since about September of last year. I closed out my position at the end of last year. Been waiting for the dust to settle a little bit on materials. I'm actually waiting for a breakout above this downward trending line to show that we have broken out of that downtrend. I did enter a small position and have been growing it here over the last month or so. The RSI is currently positive, sitting at 51. The PPO is also positive. We did have a negative crossover to the downside 2 or 3 days ago. And the accumulation has been pretty poor over the last year or so. I think if we can get a breakout above that trend line, that things will start improving for LyondellBasell. So overall, they're somewhat neutral to positive as they move into the earnings this week.
In the previous quarter, Chevron reported revenue of $47.61 billion, missing revenue estimates by $783.38 million. Chevron reported earnings of $2.18, beating estimates by 3 cents per share. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $45.11 billion with earnings of $1.72 per share. Over the last 90 days, 2 analysts raised estimates and 12 analysts lowered estimates. Chevron beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 27% of the time. Chevron is showing positive relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 2.7%.
CVX has had a pretty nice run since the April lows. They are currently trading above their 20-day, their 200-day, and their 50-day. If the price trend continues as it has, I expect the 50-day to cross above the 200-day shortly, confirming we're back on an uptrend. The RSI is positive, currently sitting at 63.54. The PPO is also positive with an upward crossover 2 or 3 days ago. And the accumulation has been very strong, reaching back to an all-time high over the past year. Overall, I think Chevron is looking strong moving into the earnings from a relative strength index and also the PPO. That wraps up the review of company earnings for my portfolio holdings for this week. If you find this video helpful, I request that you subscribe to the channel for alerts on future videos. I would also appreciate a like on the video to help support this channel. Once again, thank you for stopping by today. I wish you a great day and remember to trade well. Thank you.